The hallway smelled like fresh paint and something else. Ambition, maybe, or entitlement. Diane stood outside what used to be her bedroom, one hand still gripping the conference tote from the Botanical Society trip she'd cut short, listening to her daughter Jenna and her son Marcus argue on the other side of the door. Mom doesn't need a bedroom. Jenna was saying she's never here anyway. Exactly. Marcus's voice, that reasonable tone he used when he'd already made up his mind. She falls asleep on the couch every night. This is just making it official. Diane pushed the door open. The room was empty except for paint sample cards taped to the walls in neat rows. Sage, cream, something called urban mist. Jenna stood by the window with a tape measure, barely glancing up. Oh, you're back early. Conference ended yesterday. Diane set her tote down, heard the thump echo in the stripped space. Her bed was gone. Her dresser, the reading chair she'd reupholstered 3 years ago, the small bookshelf that held her field guides. Where are my things? Marcus gestured vaguely toward the back of the house, contractor color swatches fanned in his other hand like playing cards. We consolidated. You're always on the couch anyway, so we figured... He shrugged as if the rest explained itself. Jenna rolled up the tape measure with a sharp zip. I need a proper home office. The startup's at a critical stage, and I can't keep working from coffee shops. She said it like Diane should have anticipated this, should have offered. Diane remembered painting this room 28 years ago, 7 months pregnant with Jenna, Richard holding the ladder while she rolled periwinkle blue across the ceiling. The divorce decree had given her 50% equity, let the kids stay through college and beyond if they needed. She'd meant beyond to be temporary. That was 3 years ago, when Jenna's first business failed and she was regrouping. You said we could stay as long as we needed, Jenna added, reading something in Diane's face. I did say that. Diane walked past them, down the hall, through the kitchen that still had her mother's ceramic rooster on the windowsill, out to the garage. Her belongings were stacked against the far wall in wardrobe boxes labeled in Marcus's block handwriting. Mom's stuff, storage. Her bed frame leaned at an angle, headboard facing out. Her jewelry box, the wooden one Richard had given her for their 10th anniversary, back when gifts still meant something, sat on top of paint cans, next to a coil of garden hose. Her mother's quilt was folded on top, creased wrong, the hand-stitched flowers bent at harsh angles. She stood there longer than necessary, breathing in garish smell, motor oil, old cardboard, the faint ghost of her father's cigarettes from when he'd helped her move in decades ago. Then she went back inside. Marcus was drilling holes for a curtain rod, the whine of the drill sharp in the empty space. White dust settled on the hardwood she'd refinished 2 summers ago, on her hands and knees with the sander. Did you ask me? Diane kept her voice level. Before you did this? Jenna looked up from her phone. It's not like you're using it. You're at the garden shop, 3 days a week? And you're always gone on those Plant Society weekends. She said Plant Society the way someone might say bingo night. Diane noticed it then. The new keypad lock on the front door, brushed nickel, the kind that glowed blue when you touched it. What's the code? Oh. Marcus set down the drill. I changed the locks last week. For security. I'll text you the number. For security, Diane repeated. She waited, but no text came through. Marcus had already returned to measuring, marking the wall with a pencil, the small scratches deliberate and permanent. The next morning, Diane tried her old key in the front door. The lock didn't even pretend to turn. She rang the doorbell like a visitor, like someone selling something nobody wanted. Marcus answered in sweatpants, eating yogurt directly from the container. Her yogurt, the probiotic kind she bought at the organic market on Tuesdays. He seemed surprised to see her before 10. You need something? I live here, Diane said, and stepped past him into her own house. At the botanical garden gift shop, her coworker Lynn was rearranging the succulent display, moving the jade plants to catch morning light. You look tired, Lynn said, not unkindly. Diane picked up a price gun and started retagging the ceramic pots. Didn't sleep great. That conference wear you out? Something like that. Diane focused on the small plants, their thick leaves storing water for harder times. She'd been sleeping on the couch for 6 weeks now, she realized. Had told herself it was temporary just while Jenna was in her redecoration phase. Had believed her own story. During her lunch break, Diane sat in her car and texted the property attorney who'd handled her divorce. A brief, casual question. Can a co-owner be locked out of their own property? The response came within minutes, not without a formal buyout or partition action. You own 50%. Why? Is something wrong? Diane didn't answer. She knew what the property record said. After the divorce, Richard had signed his half of the deed over to her entirely, a gesture that felt generous at the time, maybe guilty. The house was hers. Legally, completely hers. That evening she found Marcus in her old sewing nook, the small sun porch off the living room where she used to work on quilts in the good light. He'd moved his entire gaming setup in, 3 monitors, LED strips casting purple light across the windows, his friends' voices crackling through the headset as he yelled at the screen. Her sewing machine was somewhere in the garage under a tarp, probably next to her boxed winter clothes. Jenna came home an hour later with 3 friends, all of them talking over each other about pitch decks and venture capital. She introduced Diane to one of them, a guy in expensive sneakers. This is Marcus's mom. Technically also yours, Diane said, unless something very interesting happened in 1992. Jenna's laugh was brief and sharp. Her friends didn't laugh at all. Late that night, Diane sat on the couch under an Afghan, laptop balanced on her knees, scrolling through the county property records. The document loaded slowly, official and plain. Her name, Richard's name crossed through with the deed transfer notation, the tax ID number, the lot description. She owned it, not half. All of it. From the kitchen, she heard Jenna and Marcus talking, their voices low but not quite low enough. We should convert the garage to an ADU, Marcus was saying. We could rent it out, actually make some income off this place. She won't care, Jenna's voice. She doesn't do anything anyway. Just that part-time garden thing. Diane closed the laptop. The screen went dark, her reflection caught in the black glass. A woman on a couch in her own house, holding very still. She didn't go into the kitchen, didn't correct them or defend herself. Just sat there as something cold and clear settled in her chest, something that felt almost like a plan. The coffee shop near the botanical garden had good light in the mornings, the kind that made everyone look softer than they actually were. Diane sat by the window with her tea, watching the street, not particularly waiting for anything. Then Vanessa walked in. Richard's wife, second wife, current wife. Diane still didn't have the vocabulary quite right, even 2 years after their wedding. Vanessa was younger than Richard by 15 years, which made her closer to Jenna's age than to his, a fact Jenna mentioned frequently and with venom. Their eyes met. Vanessa's face did something complicated. Surprise, then what looked like embarrassment, then a kind of resigned politeness. She walked over. Diane, hi. Hi. Diane gestured to the empty chair. You can sit if you want. I don't bite. Vanessa sat, setting down her purse carefully, like someone diffusing something. I was just going to grab coffee before... She stopped. Before going home, I guess. Long morning already? You could say that. Vanessa looked at her hands, her wedding ring turned backward on her finger, the diamond facing her palm. A nervous habit, maybe, or an intentional one. Sometimes I just need to sit somewhere quiet before I deal with the day. They sat in silence for a moment. The barista called out someone's complicated order. Diane thought about leaving, giving Vanessa her space, but something in the younger woman's face stopped her, a tiredness that felt familiar. How are things? Diane asked, keeping it neutral. Vanessa laughed, a sound with no humor in it. Fine. You know, the usual adjustments. She paused. Actually, that's a lie. Is it okay if I'm honest with you? I know this is weird. Weird is relative at this point. Fair. Vanessa traced the edge of her coffee cup. Your kids are really tough. At family dinners, I mean. They make comments about my age. Call me Dad's midlife crisis, but like, to my face. As a joke, supposedly. She looked up. Richard doesn't say anything. He just laughs it off, tells me I'm being too sensitive. Diane felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction exactly, but a kind of grim solidarity. They were never easy, even when they were small. I thought having stepkids would be like getting a ready-made family. Vanessa's voice went soft. Like I'd skip all the hard parts and just get to have these adult relationships. God, I was stupid. Not stupid, hopeful. There's a difference. They talked longer than either of them had planned. Vanessa ordered another coffee. Diane bought a muffin she didn't particularly want, just to have a reason to stay. The conversation drifted, careful at first, then less so. Vanessa mentioned she was staying at Richard's old condo, the investment property he'd kept after the divorce. He keeps pressuring me to move back to the main house where the family is, Vanessa said, like I'm being difficult by wanting space. You live with Jenna and Marcus? Diane blinked. At Richard's place? He bought that big colonial in the suburbs last year. Jenna has the whole third floor, Marcus has the finished basement. It's like a compound. Vanessa's laugh was bitter now. He thought it would be good for us all to be close. I think he just likes being the center of everything. Diane thought about her own house, her garage full of boxes, her daughter and son treating her like furniture. That sounds suffocating. It really is. Vanessa looked at her directly then. Wait, where are you living? Didn't you keep the house in the divorce? I did. Diane chose her words carefully, testing the weight of them. I'm still there. Jenna and Marcus are still there too. It's become complicated. Complicated how? So, Diane told her. Not everything, but enough. The emptied bedroom, the boxes in the garage, the new locks she didn't have the code for, the way her children had erased her incrementally, room by room, key by key, until she was sleeping on her own couch like a guest who'd overstayed. Vanessa's expression shifted from surprise to something harder. Wait, they took your bedroom? In your house? Technically my house. Legally, entirely my house, actually. But yes. That's... Vanessa stopped, shook her head. That's insane. Why don't you kick them out? I don't know. Diane realized she meant it. I think I kept believing it was temporary, that they'd finish regrouping or whatever and move on, that I was being helpful. You were being a parent. They're being assholes. The bluntness of it landed like something solid. Diane almost laughed. Well, yes. They sat with that for a moment. Then Diane said carefully, if you ever need somewhere quiet to stay, let me know. I mean it. Vanessa looked at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. You're serious? Completely. Diane stood gathering her things. Think about it. She left before Vanessa could respond, before she could second-guess the offer, before the whole strange encounter could curdle into awkwardness. But walking to her car, she felt something unfamiliar. Not quite hope, but its close cousin. Possibility, maybe. The sense that there were moves left to make. The weekend arrived heavy and gray, the kind of October weather that made everything feel provisional. Diane came home, still rang the doorbell, still waited like a stranger, to find her house full of people. Jenna's startup colleagues, 6 or 7 of them, spread across the living room with laptops and coffee cups and an energy that filled the space aggressively. Jenna saw her in the doorway. We're doing pitch practice. Can you keep it down? Keep it down. In her own living room. Diane moved through the strangers carefully, aiming for the couch where she'd been sleeping, where her pillow was still wadded against one arm and her reading glasses sat on the side table. Someone's laptop bag was on her pillow now. She moved it to the floor, sat down, invisible. Marcus found her an hour later. Hey, can you pick up my dry cleaning tomorrow? The ticket's on the counter. I have work. It's part-time, Mom. You've got time. He was already walking away back to his gaming setup in the sun porch, back to the purple LED lights and the shouting at screens. Then Jenna, later. Also, can you grocery shop this week? We're out of basically everything. And later still. Oh, and my friend needs someone to watch her dog on Tuesday. Just for the day. You don't mind, right? Diane didn't answer. She went out to the garage instead, navigating around Marcus's bike and the old lawnmower to the stack of wardrobe boxes against the far wall. She sat on one, her winter clothes, probably, or her books, and looked at the carefully labeled cardboard, the inventory of her life in storage. She found an old photograph wedged between 2 boxes, must have fallen when they were packing her away. She was 30 in the picture, visibly pregnant, painting that bedroom periwinkle blue. Richard had taken it, she remembered. She was smiling at the camera, one hand on her belly, the other holding a roller. Behind her, the wall was half-finished, the color bright and hopeful. She'd been erased incrementally. That was the word that kept coming back. Not all at once, not with cruelty exactly, but with a steady, patient removal. Her bedroom, her sewing space, her key, her visibility. They'd consolidated her, Marcus had said, like she was inventory to be managed. From inside the house she heard laughter. Jenna's friends, probably landing some joke about disruption or pivoting or whatever words they were using this month. Diane sat on her boxed belongings in her own garage and felt the cold October air seep through the walls. She took out her phone and called the property attorney back. The woman answered on the second ring. "I have a question," Diane said. "Can I rent a room in my own house?" A pause. "You're the sole owner, correct?" "Yes." "Then yes. You can rent the whole thing if you want." "Why, do your children pay you rent?" "No." "Interesting." The attorney's voice shifted, became more alert. "Are you thinking of establishing tenancy for them or for someone else?" Diane said. "I'm thinking of renting a room to someone else." The attorney was quiet for a moment. "That's well within your rights. Just make sure you have a proper lease agreement. I can send you a template." "That would be helpful." "Diane," the attorney said, and her tone was careful now. "Is everything all right?" "I think it's about to be," Diane said, and ended the call. That night she texted Vanessa before she could overthink it. Simple message, no preamble. Serious offer. "I have a bedroom available if you need space. Quiet. Rent negotiable." She sent it, then set the phone face down on the couch and tried to read her book about native orchids. The words wouldn't focus. Jenna was still in the living room with her colleagues, their voices a constant hum. Marcus's gaming setup made shooting sounds from the sun porch. Someone used the bathroom and didn't wash their hands. An hour later, her phone buzzed. "Vanessa, can we talk?" They met the next day at the botanical garden during Diane's lunch break, on the bench near the meditation garden where visitors rarely wandered. Vanessa looked different in daylight, more solid somehow. She sat down and didn't waste time. "Are you serious about the bedroom?" "Completely serious." "And you know it'll cause drama, with Jenna and Marcus, I mean." Vanessa twisted her ring again. "With Richard too, probably." "I'm counting on it," Diane said. Vanessa looked at her, really looked, and something like understanding crossed her face. Then slowly she smiled. "Okay, tell me the terms." They talked for 40 minutes, working through details. "Market rate rent," Diane said. She looked it up on her phone, showed Vanessa comparable listings in the area. Vanessa countered, said she couldn't afford quite that much on her grad school stipend but could manage 3/4. Diane agreed. They'd need a proper lease, printed and signed. Vanessa would have her own key, full access to common spaces, her own shelf in the refrigerator. "When can I move in?" Vanessa asked. "Whenever you want," Diane said. "This weekend?" "This weekend." Vanessa stood, brushed off her jeans. "This is either the smartest thing I've ever done or the most insane." "Sometimes those are the same thing," Diane said. Walking back to the gift shop, Diane felt lighter than she had in months. Lynn looked up from the register, caught something in her expression. "You look different," Lynn said. "Good different." "I made a decision," Diane said. "About what?" "About who gets to live in my house." Diane picked up the watering can, started tending to the ferns in their hanging baskets. The water caught the light, made small rainbows. "Turns out it's my decision to make." Lynn smiled. "About time." Moving day arrived with clear skies and cold air, the kind of November morning that made everything sharp-edged. Diane had timed it carefully. Jenna had mentioned a startup networking brunch. Marcus had his standing Saturday gaming tournament that kept him occupied until afternoon. The house would be empty from 10 until at least 2. Vanessa pulled up at 10:15 in a small sedan packed efficiently, boxes visible through the back window. She got out, looked at the house like she was memorizing it, then met Diane's eyes across the driveway. "Last chance to back out," Vanessa said. "No, not backing out." Diane grabbed one end of a box labeled books. "Are you?" "Absolutely not." Vanessa took the other end. "Let's do this." They worked quickly, carrying boxes and bags through the front door. Diane's key, the one that actually worked now because she'd had the locks changed back yesterday. A locksmith appointment Marcus didn't know about yet. The bedroom looked different, emptied of Jenna's office furniture, which they'd carefully, methodically moved into the hallway that morning. The desk sat at an angle near the bathroom door. The filing cabinet blocked the linen closet. The ergonomic chair with its expensive mesh back faced the wall like it was being punished. Diane had scrubbed the room the day before, washing walls, cleaning windows, making it neutral again. Not hers, not Jenna's, ready for someone new. Vanessa's belongings were modest: a bed frame, a mattress still in plastic, boxes of clothes and books, a small desk lamp shaped like a crane. She set a potted succulent on the windowsill, adjusted it twice to catch the light. "This feels real now," Vanessa said, standing in the center of the room. It is real. Diane handed her a folder. Lease agreement. Lynn from the garden shop notarized it yesterday. She's official, has the stamp and everything. They sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Diane had eaten breakfast for 28 years, where she'd helped with homework and hosted birthday parties and signed her divorce papers. Vanessa read through the lease carefully, asked 2 clarifying questions, then signed in blue ink. Diane signed below. Lynn had already notarized it, her official seal embossed in the corner. Diane made 2 copies, gave one to Vanessa, put her own in the fire safe under the kitchen sink, behind the silver polish and the spare light bulbs that had been there since the 90s. "I'll give you a key," Diane said, and held one out, newly cut yesterday, brass and sharp-edged. "This works on the front door and the back door. The keypad code is your birth month and day, 4 digits. I programmed it in yesterday." Vanessa took the key, closed her hand around it. "Thank you. You're paying rent. It's business." "It's not just business." Vanessa looked at her steadily. "And we both know. They finished unloading the car by noon. Vanessa's bed was assembled, sheets tucked in with hospital corners. Her books were on the shelf, mostly graduate texts, psychology and social work, a few novels mixed in. The room looked inhabited now, claimed. Marcus came home first. Diane heard his key in the lock, his old key, the one that didn't work anymore, and then the puzzled silence when it wouldn't turn. He tried again, jiggling it. Then he rang the doorbell, and Diane answered, with Vanessa standing just behind her in the hallway, visible. "What's going on?" Marcus looked past Diane to Vanessa, then to the moving boxes in the entryway. "Why doesn't my key work?" "I had the locks changed back," Diane said. "You changed them without asking me. I changed them back." "Okay, but—" Marcus saw Vanessa's boxes again, understanding dawning slowly. "What is she doing here?" "I live here now," Vanessa said. Her voice was level, almost friendly. Marcus laughed, that sharp bark he used when something confused him. "No, seriously, what's going on?" "Vanessa's renting the bedroom," Diane said. "She has a lease. Would you like to see it?" "What bedroom?" But Marcus was already looking past them, down the hall to where Jenna's office furniture sat like a displaced person. He pushed past them, not roughly but without asking permission, and went straight to the bedroom. Saw Vanessa's things, the made bed, the succulent in the window. "You can't do this." He turned back to them. "That's Jenna's office." "It's my bedroom," Diane said. "Was my bedroom." "Is again, technically. Vanessa's bedroom now." "This is insane. Dad is going to lose his mind." "Your father doesn't own this house." Diane stayed in the doorway, Vanessa beside her. "I do. I own it completely." "You don't pay rent. Marcus doesn't pay rent." "Vanessa does. Legally, she has more right to be here than either of you." The silence that followed had weight to it. Marcus looked between them, trying to find the angle, the explanation that would make this make sense in the world where he controlled things. He couldn't find it. "Jenna's going to freak out," he said finally. "Probably," Diane agreed. Jenna arrived home an hour later, laughing with someone on the phone, her voice bright and caring. She stopped mid-sentence when she saw her office furniture in the hallway. The phone call ended abruptly. "What the hell?" Diane and Vanessa were in the kitchen making tea. English breakfast for Diane, chamomile for Vanessa. The kettle was just whistling. Jenna appeared in the doorway, face flushed. "Why is all my stuff in the hallway?" "Because it was in Vanessa's room," Diane said, pouring hot water carefully. "Vanessa's—" Jenna saw her then, standing by the counter. "What are you doing here?" "I live here." Vanessa said it simply, without apology. "No, no way." Jenna looked at Diane. "You cannot be serious right now." "Completely serious. Vanessa signed a lease this morning. She's renting the bedroom. That's my office." "It's my bedroom. I own the house, Jenna. You don't pay rent. You took my space without asking. Vanessa is my tenant. Legal tenant with a signed, notarized lease." Jenna's face did something complicated. Anger, disbelief, and underneath it something that might have been fear. "You're letting her live here? Her?" She pointed at Vanessa like she was an exhibit. "I'm letting my tenant live here. She pays rent. This is about revenge. You're doing this to punish us." "I'm doing this because I own a house and needed a tenant." Diane handed Vanessa her tea. "Everything else is your interpretation. Dad will freak out." So Marcus said, "I mean it. He'll—" Jenna stopped. Does he even know? Not yet, Vanessa said quietly, but he will soon. Jenna stared at her. You're seriously doing this? Living with his ex-wife to get back at him or something? I'm living here because I need a place to stay where people don't treat me like furniture. Vanessa's voice was calm, but something harder had entered it, where I'm not made to feel like an inconvenience or a mistake every single day. Jenna had no response to that. She looked at the tea kettle, the cups, the domestic scene playing out in her mother's kitchen with her father's wife at the center of it. This is insane, she said again, but the energy had gone out of it. Your office furniture's in the hallway, Diane said. You'll need to move it somewhere else. The hallway's a fire hazard. Jenna left without another word. They heard her door slam upstairs, heard her voice rising in a phone call. Probably to Richard, probably to Marcus, probably to anyone who would validate her outrage. Vanessa set down her tea. That went better than expected. Did it? She didn't throw anything. Vanessa's smile was small. With Richard's family, that counts as restraint. The week that followed had a strange quality, like living in a house where the gravity had shifted. Jenna and Marcus moved through the common spaces like ghosts, present but not engaging. They left for work early, came home late, took their meals in their rooms. Diane's phone filled with texts she didn't answer, Marcus asking if she was done with this tantrum, Jenna sending articles about family estrangement with pointed commentary. Vanessa settled in quietly. She cooked breakfast most mornings, offered Diane coffee without asking if she wanted it, just poured 2 cups and set one at her place at the table. She worked at her laptop in the late afternoons, her graduate coursework spread across the kitchen counter, and asked Diane's opinion on her papers about family systems theory and attachment disorders, and Diane realized no one had asked her opinion on anything in years. They fell into an easy rhythm. Vanessa washed dishes immediately after using them. She bought groceries without being asked and split them fairly. She kept her music low and her door open and moved through the house like someone who'd been given permission to exist there. On Thursday evening, Marcus tried a different approach. He found Diane in the living room, reading her book about native orchid propagation, Vanessa upstairs in her room. He sat on the other end of the couch. Mom, can we talk? We're talking. I mean, really talk. He looked uncomfortable, like someone following a script. Look, I know things got weird, with the bedroom and everything, but this... He gestured vaguely upward toward where Vanessa was. You're embarrassing yourself. Everyone knows you're doing this for revenge. Everyone? Dad? Jenna? Our friends? Marcus leaned forward. They're all talking about how you're being petty and vindictive. It's not a good look. Diane marked her page carefully. I'm doing this because I own the house and needed a tenant. I'm not responsible for how other people interpret my actions. But you have to know how it looks. I know how it is, and that's what matters. Marcus tried for another 10 minutes, cycling through guilt and logic and appeals to family loyalty. Diane listened with half her attention, the other half on her book, on the fascinating section about mycorrhizal networks and how orchids couldn't survive without the right fungal partners in their roots. When he left, frustrated and empty-handed, Vanessa came downstairs. You handled that well, she said. Practice, Diane said. I've had years of practice. Richard showed up on Saturday morning unannounced, without knocking. He still had a key. Diane realized she'd forgotten about the spare she'd given him years ago for emergencies. He let himself in and found Diane and Vanessa on the front porch, repotting plants. Diane had brought out her collection of ferns and succulents that had been slowly dying in the garage, and Vanessa had offered to help rehabilitate them. They were working in companionable silence, hands in potting soil, when Richard's voice cut through. What the hell is going on here? They looked up. Richard stood in the doorway, still fit from his gym routine, still wearing the expensive casual clothes that were supposed to look effortless. His face was red. Good morning, Diane said. Don't good morning me. He looked at Vanessa. What are you doing here? Repotting plants, Vanessa said mildly. I mean, what are you doing living here, in my house? Not your house, Diane corrected. My house. You signed it over in the divorce, remember? Grand gesture. That's not the point? Richard came out onto the porch, looming in the way he used to when he wanted to control a conversation. You're playing some kind of game with my wife, and it ends now. I'm not playing anything. Vanessa needed housing. I had a bedroom available. We signed a lease. You signed a... Richard stopped, recalibrating. Vanessa, we need to talk. Alone. Anything you say to me, you can say in front of Diane, Vanessa said. She didn't look up from the fern she was working on, gently loosening its root-bound soil. Richard stared at her. Since when? Since I became her tenant and her friend. Both things can be true. Her friend? Richard said it like a diagnosis. Jesus Christ, do you hear yourself? She's my ex-wife. You're my wife. This is what? Vanessa finally looked up. Unusual, complicated, or just uncomfortable for you? The porch went quiet. Diane kept her hands busy in the soil, giving them space but not leaving. Richard seemed to realize he'd lost control of the conversation, maybe had never had it in the first place. Come home, he said to Vanessa, his voice dropping to something meant to be gentle. We'll talk this through properly. You don't have to do this. This is home right now, Vanessa said. I'm your husband. And she's my landlord and my friend? Both things can be true, Vanessa repeated. Richard looked at Diane then, really looked at her, maybe for the first time in years. Whatever he saw there made him step back. You're not going to get away with whatever this is. I'm not trying to get away with anything, Diane said. I'm just living in my house with my tenant. If that bothers you, that's between you and your wife. He left without another word, his car screeching slightly as he pulled away. Diane and Vanessa sat in the aftermath, hands still dirty, plants half repotted between them. Thank you, Vanessa said after a moment. For what? For space to figure out what I actually want. Vanessa looked at her hands, at the soil under her fingernails. I think I've been letting people tell me what I want for a really long time. I know the feeling, Diane said. They finished the repotting in comfortable quiet, the November sun weak but present. Inside, the house was silent. Marcus had gone out somewhere. Jenna was locked in her room. The space felt different now, not empty but cleared. Like something had shifted in the foundation, some weight redistributed. Vanessa carried the last of the repotted plants inside, setting them on the windowsill where they'd get eastern light. Diane watched her move through the kitchen, confident now, at home. It wasn't her house, but it wasn't not her house either. The categories had gotten complicated. That evening, Jenna came downstairs. Not hostile exactly, but careful. She found Diane in the living room. Can we talk? Of course. Jenna sat, hands folded in her lap. The startup's failing. I need to... She stopped, started again. I'm going to move back with Dad for a while, just until I figure things out. Okay. Are you... Jenna looked at her. Are you kicking us out? I never kicked you out. I reclaimed my bedroom. Diane kept her voice level, matter of fact. You're welcome to stay as long as you want. But I own the house, Jenna. I own it completely. That means I get to decide who lives here and under what terms? Jenna nodded slowly. We were really awful, weren't we? Diane could have softened it, could have offered comfort or mitigation. Instead, she said, yes. Just that. The truth, plain and without cushioning. Jenna absorbed it, her face doing something complicated. I'm sorry. I know you are. Does that make a difference? I don't know yet, Diane said honestly. Ask me later. Jenna left 3 days after that, packing methodically, not dramatically. She hugged Diane in the driveway, brief and awkward, and said she'd call. Diane believed she would eventually, when the stakes felt lower, when enough time had passed. Marcus took longer, lingering in his uncertainty, but 2 weeks later he mentioned a roommate situation in the city, a sublet that opened up. He moved out on a Sunday, his car packed efficiently, his goodbye rushed. I'll text you, he said. Okay, Diane said. And he did, occasionally. Surface texts about weather and work, nothing deep. Diane responded when she felt like it, didn't when she didn't. The relationship was redefined now, not severed, but clarified. She was his mother, but she wasn't his accommodation. The house felt different with just her and Vanessa. Quieter, but not lonely. They shared cooking duties, split the utilities fairly, maintained separate lives that intersected in the kitchen over tea and in the living room over books. Vanessa stayed out late some nights, therapy appointments with Richard, working things through. She came home and told Diane about it, not asking for advice exactly, just sharing. We're trying, Vanessa said one night. It's hard, but we're trying. That's good, Diane said and meant it. 3 months in, Vanessa mentioned she'd probably move back with Richard eventually. They'd found a house smaller than his colonial, just for the two of them. Boundaries established, expectations clarified. She'd give Diane notice, of course. Plenty of time. "Whenever you're ready," Diane said, "no rush." But, privately, sitting in her reclaimed bedroom with sage green walls she'd painted herself, Diane felt something settle. The house would be hers again. Just hers. Not empty. Not erased. Just hers. The house in February had a particular quality. Light coming through bare windows, the garden sleeping under frost, everything simplified down to its essential shape. Vanessa was packing, not dramatically but methodically, folding clothes into boxes she'd gotten from the liquor store, the kind with divided sections that made everything fit neatly. Diane sat on the bed, Vanessa's bed technically, though the room still felt like it belonged to some shared project they'd completed together. "You don't have to rush." "I'm not rushing. Richard and I close on the house next week." Vanessa wrapped a picture frame in newspaper, and honestly, I think we're ready. The therapy helped. Having space helped more. "I'm glad." "Are you?" Vanessa looked at her. "You'll be alone here again." "Alone isn't the same as erased," Diane said. "I'm starting to understand the difference." They worked in comfortable silence, Vanessa packing, Diane helping with the tape and labels. Outside, a cardinal landed on the feeder Diane had hung in January, bright red against the gray morning. She'd spent the winter slowly reclaiming the house, not changing it exactly, but remembering what it felt like to move through rooms without asking permission. The cardinal flew away, and Diane watched its path through the bare branches. She'd forgotten, in all those years of accommodating, that she liked watching birds. Had kept feeders when the kids were young, maintained a life list in a small notebook. That notebook was probably still in one of the garage boxes, mixed in with all the other pieces of herself she'd set aside. "I'm going to keep the feeders filled," Diane said. "After you leave. I used to watch birds all the time." "I didn't know that," Vanessa said. "Neither did I for a while." Diane smiled. "Funny what you forget about yourself." Lynn from the garden shop had called 2 weeks ago about the full-time curator position. They wanted someone to oversee the native plant restoration project, develop educational programming, manage the volunteer propagation program. Diane had said yes without thinking twice, without checking with anyone, without considering how it might inconvenience people who no longer lived there. "When do you start the new job?" Vanessa asked, reading her mind in that way they'd developed over months of cohabitation. "March 1st. I'm nervous." "You'll be incredible." Vanessa sealed a box, labeled it books, in neat handwriting. "You know more about plants than anyone I've ever met, and you actually listen when people ask questions." "It's been a long time since I've done something that felt important. That felt like mine." "Everything should feel like yours," Vanessa said. "That's what I learned here. That I get to take up space without apologizing for it." Richard came by that afternoon to help with the heavy furniture. Diane let him in, civil but not warm, and he nodded at her with something that might have been respect or might have been wariness. Hard to tell. He and Vanessa worked on disassembling the bed frame, speaking to each other in low voices, the language of people trying to rebuild something. Diane gave them space, went to work in the garden even though it was cold, turning over soil that would be ready for spring planting. When they finished loading the truck, Vanessa came out to find her. "I'm going to head over to the new place, get started unpacking, but I'll be back tomorrow for the rest." "Take your time." Vanessa hesitated. "You know you can visit, right? The new house, once we're settled. I'd like that." "I'd like that too," Diane said, and realized she meant it. Richard appeared at the gate, keys in hand, waiting. He looked at Diane properly this time, no anger in it, just acknowledgement. "Thank you," he said, "for giving her space when I wasn't." Diane nodded. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was something adjacent to it. Understanding, maybe? They'd all been trying to control things that couldn't be controlled, trying to fit people into shapes they'd outgrown. "Take care of her," Diane said. "I'm trying to learn how," Richard said, and got in the truck. After they left, Diane stood in the garden as the afternoon light faded, the cold seeping through her jacket. The house behind her was quiet, not empty yet. Vanessa would be back tomorrow for the last boxes, but transitioning. She felt it like a held breath the moment before something resolved. Inside, she made tea and sat at the kitchen table with the classified section of the newspaper, something she hadn't looked at in years. There was an ad for community college classes, Intro to Botanical Illustration, Watercolor Techniques. She circled it with a pen. Another ad for a Native Plant Society lecture series. Circled that too. The botanical illustration class met Tuesday evenings. She could do that now. Could spend money on herself without calculating who else needed it first. Could commit to something that served no one's needs but her own. Her phone buzzed. "Jenna, can I call you?" Diane replied, "Yes." The call came through a minute later. Jenna's voice was tentative. Hey, I wanted to." Jenna stopped, started again. "I'm doing better. The therapy's helping. And I got a part-time job. Nothing fancy, but it's income while I figure out what's next." "That's good. I'm glad." "And I wanted to ask, could I come by sometime? Not to move back," Jenna added quickly. "Just to visit, to talk." Diane thought about it, let the silence stretch. Not to be cruel, but to be honest about what she needed to consider. "Yes," she said finally, "but call first, and understand that this is my space now. I'm not accommodating around you anymore." "I understand." Jenna's voice was small. "I really do understand now, what we did." "Then yes, come by. We can have coffee." "Okay." Jenna sounded relieved. "Thank you." They talked for a few more minutes, surface things, careful things. When they hung up, Diane felt something loosen in her chest. Not resolution, not forgiveness, but a door opening slightly. She could decide later how wide to let it swing. Marcus texted that evening. "Jenna said you guys talked." "That's cool. Maybe I can visit too sometime?" Diane replied, "Maybe. We'll see." She didn't owe them immediate reconciliation. Didn't owe them comfort or reassurance that everything was fine now. It wasn't fine, but it was different. The terms had changed. She'd changed them. Vanessa came back the next morning with coffee and pastries, a peace offering for the disruption of moving day. They worked through the remaining boxes, the last of the belongings that had made the room feel inhabited. By noon, the space was empty again, clean and neutral, ready for whatever came next. They stood in the doorway together, looking at the sage-green walls, the window that faced the garden. "Are you going to rent it out again?" Vanessa asked. "I don't know. Maybe I'll just let it be my bedroom again." Diane smiled. "Novel concept." "Revolutionary," Vanessa said, smiling back. They hugged at the door, not the brief social hug of acquaintances, but the real thing, the kind that acknowledged what had happened here. "Thank you," Vanessa said into Diane's shoulder. "For everything." "Thank you," Diane replied. "You reminded me who owns the house. You always owned it." "I know, but I forgot." After Vanessa left, Diane walked through the quiet rooms. The house felt bigger somehow, not empty but spacious. She opened windows despite the cold, let fresh air move through, clearing out the winter staleness. In the bedroom, her bedroom, she stood at the window and looked at the garden she'd been neglecting, at the beds that needed attention, at the space that was hers to shape. The periwinkle blue was long gone, painted over twice now, but she could still remember it. Could remember being 30 and hopeful, painting a room for a baby who would grow up to forget she existed as anything more than furniture. But that was then. This was now. She spent the afternoon painting, rolling sage green over the existing sage green, refreshing it, making it new again. The windows stayed open. The radio played something classical she didn't recognize but liked. Her phone stayed in the kitchen, unanswered. When she finished, the room smelled like paint and possibility. She'd buy new bedding, she decided. Something in cream or pale yellow. She'd hang the botanical prints she'd been storing in the garage. She'd put her mother's quilt on the bed, folded properly this time, with respect. That evening, she sat on the floor of her freshly painted room, eating takeout directly from the container, not bothering with plates or formality. Just her and the empty space and the smell of new paint. It felt decadent somehow. Eating in her bedroom. Making a mess if she wanted to. No one to clean up after, no one to accommodate. She thought about the botanical illustration class, about the bird feeders she'd fill, about the volunteer program she'd be leading at the garden, about all the small ways she was filling her life with things that mattered to her, not things that made her useful to other people. March arrived with the kind of weather that couldn't decide what season it was. Cold mornings, warm afternoons, everything in between. Diane started the curator position on the 1st, arriving early to her new office in the garden's education center. It was small but had good light and a view of the demonstration beds. Lynn brought her coffee that first morning. "How does it feel?" "Terrifying. Exciting." Diane unpacked her box of supplies, field guides, notebooks, the good pruning shears. "Like starting something I should have started years ago." "Better late than never." The work was consuming in the best way. She developed curriculum for the volunteer program, led workshops on native plant propagation, spent hours in the greenhouse with her hands in soil and her mind fully engaged. People asked her questions and she knew the answers. They listened when she spoke. She took up space without apology. One volunteer, an elderly man named Tom, who reminded her vaguely of her father, asked her advice about converting his lawn to native meadow. She spent an hour with him after the workshop, sketching out plans, recommending species, talking about bloom times and pollinator support. He listened carefully, took notes, thanked her profusely. "You really know your stuff?" he said. "I've been learning for years," Tan replied. "Just finally have somewhere to use it." Evenings, she came home to her quiet house and didn't feel lonely. She cooked dinner for one, read books in the living room, worked on her own garden as the weather warmed. The daffodils came up in March, tulips in April. She planted native columbine and butterfly weed, created a small meadow section in what used to be the lawn. The neighbors commented on the meadow, some with curiosity, some with concern about property values. Diane explained the benefits politely, offered to share information about native plants, didn't apologize for her choices. Her yard, her decisions. Jenna visited in late March, nervous and formal. They had coffee at the kitchen table, talked about Jenna's new job, about therapy, about the ways people hurt each other without meaning to, and sometimes while meaning to. It was awkward and halting and real. "The house looks good," Jenna said, looking around. "Different." "I'm making it mine," Diane said. "Finally." "I'm sorry we took so long to see you," Jenna said quietly. "To actually see you as a person and not just as mom, as someone who existed to make our lives easier." Diane appreciated the honesty. "I let you, though. For a long time. I let you treat me that way because I thought that's what mothers did. Disappear into service. That's not what mothers should do." "No," Diane agreed, "it's not." They didn't fix everything that day, didn't even try to, but they had coffee and talked, and when Jenna left, they hugged, and it felt less obligatory than before. Progress, Diane thought. Incremental, imperfect progress. Marcus came by in April, brought her a plant from the farmer's market, a lavender already blooming. "Thought you might like this," he said, sheepish. "I do. Thank you." They sat on the porch, the same porch where she and Vanessa had repotted plants while Richard yelled. Everything felt different now. The power had redistributed. She wasn't their accommodation anymore, wasn't their furniture or their convenience. "I've been thinking about what we did," Marcus said. "How we just took over, like you didn't matter." "You did take over," Diane said. No softening it. "Yeah?" He looked at his hands. "I don't know why we thought that was okay. I guess because you let us, but that's not an excuse." "No, it's not." "Are you, I mean, can we—" Marcus struggled. "Can we fix this?" "I don't know," Diane said honestly. "But we can try. On different terms than before." "What terms?" "Terms where I'm a person, not just your mother. Where I have my own life and my own space, and you respect both." She looked at him directly. "Terms where you call before you visit. Where you ask instead of assuming. Where you remember I exist when it's not convenient for you." Marcus nodded slowly. "I can do that. I want to do that." "Then we'll see," Diane said. He left an hour later, promising to text more, to visit with permission, to try harder. Diane planted the lavender near the front door where she'd smell it every time she came home. Small things, she thought. Relationships rebuilt through small, consistent things. Vanessa invited her to dinner in May, at the new house she and Richard had bought. It was smaller than the colonial, more manageable, with a garden that needed work. Richard greeted her at the door, civil and almost friendly, and they had a pleasant evening talking about neutral things, home improvement projects, the upcoming election, a documentary they'd all seen. On the way out, Vanessa walked her to the car. "Things are better," she said. "Not perfect, but better. We're learning." "I'm glad. You look good," Vanessa said. "We're really good." Lighter somehow. I feel lighter. Diane unlocked her car. Turns out reclaiming your life has that effect. Turns out, Vanessa agreed, smiling. Driving home through the spring evening, Diane felt the weight of it. Not the burden kind of weight, but the substantial kind. The weight of a life that was hers, of choices she'd made, boundaries she'd set, space she'd claimed. The house was dark when she pulled up, and she left it dark for a moment, sitting in the car and looking at it. Her house. No qualifiers, no shared ownership, no one else's permission needed, just hers. Inside, she turned on lights as she moved through rooms, each switch a small declaration: kitchen light, living room lamp, hallway fixture, the bedroom last, her bedroom, with its sage green walls and cream-colored bedding and botanical prints hung exactly where she wanted them. She changed into pajamas, washed her face, went through the small rituals of ending a day. Her phone buzzed. Lynn, asking about tomorrow's volunteer schedule. She answered, made plans, confirmed details. Another text came through, Jenna sharing a photo of a plant she'd bought for her apartment, asking if Diane could help her keep it alive. Diane smiled, sent back care instructions, added that Jenna could call if she had questions, small connections maintained on her terms. Not perfect, but honest. She turned off her bedroom light and stood at the window for a moment, looking out at the garden in moonlight. The meadow section was beginning to establish, small shoots of native plants pushing through the soil. It would take time, months, years, to become what she envisioned. But she had time. She had space. She had permission from the only person whose permission mattered. Summer arrived with heat and long light, and Diane found herself busier than she'd been in years. The curator position expanded. She was writing grant proposals, leading larger workshops, being interviewed by the local paper about the native plant movement. Lynn joked that she'd become a minor celebrity in the botanical world. "It's just plants," Diane said. "It's never just plants," Lynn replied. "It's about caring for something properly, giving it what it needs to thrive." Diane thought about that later, working in her own garden, her hands in soil that was hers to tend. Maybe that was the lesson in all of this, learning to give herself what she needed to thrive, learning that she deserved space and light and proper care. The phone rang one evening in July. Richard, which was unusual. "I wanted to apologize," he said without preamble, "for how I acted when Vanessa moved in with you. For a lot of things, actually." Diane sat down, surprised. "Okay. I spent a long time thinking I knew what was best for everyone. For you, for the kids, for Vanessa. Turns out I was mostly just trying to control things I was afraid of losing." He paused. "You taking control of your own house? It scared me. Made me realize how much I'd been taking from you, how much I'd taught the kids to take from you. They're adults. They made their own choices." "Yeah, but I modeled it. The taking. The assuming you'd always accommodate." Richard sighed. "Vanessa's in therapy with me. We're working through a lot. But I wanted to tell you, I'm sorry. For the divorce stuff, for the house stuff, for raising kids who thought you were furniture." Diane didn't know what to say. Sorry felt insufficient, but it was something. "Thank you for saying that." "Are you happy?" Richard asked. "You seem happy. Vanessa says you're doing really well." "I am happy," Diane said, and realized it was completely true. "For the first time in a long time, I'm happy." They talked for a few more minutes, then said goodbye. Diane sat with her phone in her lap, watching the evening light fade through her windows, and felt something old and tight finally release. The botanical illustration class had been meeting for 3 months now, every Tuesday evening in a bright room at the community college. Diane's sketchbook was filling with careful drawings: trillium, bloodroot, wild ginger. Her instructor, a retired botanical artist named Margaret, had commented on her attention to detail, her patience with the slow work of observation. "You have a good eye," Margaret said during their last class before summer break. "Have you thought about submitting to the Society's journal?" Diane hadn't. The idea felt presumptuous, but she was learning slowly that taking up space wasn't presumptuous. It was just living. "I'll think about it," she said. August brought Jenna and Marcus both for dinner. Planned in advance, calendared properly, their first time back together since they'd moved out. Diane cooked, nothing fancy but good, and they sat, at the kitchen table like civilized adults having a meal. The conversation was careful at first, then easier. They asked about her work, and she told them about the restoration project, The grant she'd won, the field trip she was planning. They listened, asked follow-up questions, seemed genuinely interested. "I didn't know you were doing all that," Marcus said. "That's actually really cool." "I've been doing it for months," Diane said. "You haven't asked." "Yeah." Marcus looked uncomfortable. "I'm trying to be better about that." "Are you?" Diane asked. "Not cruel, just honest." "I'm trying," Marcus said. "Not perfect at it yet." After dinner, they sat on the porch with iced tea, watching the lightning bugs emerge in the meadow garden. Jenna mentioned she was thinking about going back to school, getting a degree in sustainable business. "That sounds good," Diane said. "What made you decide?" "I don't know. Watching you, maybe." Jenna looked at her. "Watching you rebuild your life and not apologize for it made me think about what I actually want instead of what I think I should want." They left before it got too late, hugged her properly, promised to stay in touch. Diane waved from the porch as they drove away, then went inside to clean up. The dishes didn't feel like a burden. The house didn't feel empty. Everything felt exactly right. September arrived with cool mornings and that particular light that made everything look sharper. Diane stood in the hallway outside her bedroom, her actual bedroom, the one that was hers, the one no one argued about anymore, and looked at the open door. The sage green walls caught the morning sun. Her mother's quilt lay folded at the foot of the bed, properly creased now, respectfully placed. The botanical prints hung in frames she'd chosen. The succulent on the windowsill was thriving, putting out new growth. She heard nothing but the garden sounds through the window she'd left cracked. Birds, wind in the leaves, the small sounds of a house that was hers. Not hers because she'd fought for it in court. Not hers because documents said so. Hers because she'd reclaimed it, room by room, decision by decision, boundary by boundary. No voices arguing about what she needed. No measurements being taken of space that was never theirs to fill. No one treating her like furniture or convenience or accommodation. She stepped inside her bedroom and closed the door quietly behind her, not shutting anyone out, just shutting herself in, finally, completely, hers. The morning light crossed the walls, and Diane stood in it, hands loose at her sides, breathing in the smell of her own space, sage and cotton and the faint scent of paint that had long since dried but somehow lingered. This was hers. The house, the room, the life. All of it, entirely, hers. She opened the door again and went to make coffee, moving through her home with the easy confidence of someone who belonged there, because she did. She finally completely did.